Hey everybody, I'm Captain Zeus and welcome back to BP Fun. Today I'm going to be doing another comic book versus TV show comparison for... Now, don't forget to like and subscribe for more comic book and TV show comparisons like this. Please hit the bell to be notified if we do another Invincible one. Let us know in the comments if you want us to do any other comic book versus TV show comparisons. We're also going to be doing The Boys and The Walking Dead coming to you soon. Now, we started this episode off similar to how Season 1 started off, with the Guardians fighting. This didn't happen in the comics, but it was nice to see the comic-accurate Guardians fighting the previous iteration of the Lizard League, with the male version of Green Ghost and nods to War Woman being gay like she was in the comics. It did lead into how Adam Eve's mom, or biological mother, went to the same hospital as her quote-unquote adoptive parents, and that is how essentially everything happened that you see in the show. Now, one thing I did enjoy about this spin-off episode, or whatever you want to call it, is the fact that we get to see Eve's understanding of Adam's and eventually her powers really grow to the point of creeping people out, even alienating Eve. We only get to see the babysitter struggling with his chemistry homework in the comics to hint at this. Now, it's dope to have the legendary actor and voice actor Lance Reddick to voice Erickson. Rest in peace. Also, Donald was there from the beginning as an advisor of some sorts in the comics. Not sure if he was an android at this point. It was a little cliche to have Eve's friend Val freaking out at Eve's powers and stop being friends with her out of fear. Adding on to Eve being alienated because of her abilities, personally, I don't know why she was freaked out the way she was, especially in a world full of superheroes and superpowered individuals. But regardless, this episode did make you really feel for Eve. In the comics, Dr. Brandyworth was kind of creepy with how he presented himself to Eve and began dialogue, straight up saying that he's her father. Now, Eve was like a young teen in the comics, so there's a few adult jokes put in there and her trying to act way older than she actually was. I personally preferred them using the younger Eve in the show that they did, having to handle everything. It brought in a sense of innocence and made things a little bit more emotional and relatable in my opinion. Dr. Brandyworth was also on the run in a straight up hobo in the show, but in the comics he was still mostly in his scientist getup and had to disguise himself as a hobo to lay low after he had already warned Eve about her powers. Now, in the comics, the storyline with the siblings coming to kill Eve was more or less the same, except in the comics, Erickson sent out the quote-unquote failed experiments after Eve in order to get some use out of them and wear her down so that they could capture her. The differences were they didn't fight on the highway like in the show, but instead fought inside of a bank, and they had hostages. And there was a hero from the Capes Incorporated there on the scene with the cops who let Eve handle it. Now, you'll learn more about Capes Incorporated later on. I will say the fight on the highway was way better than the fight at the bank in the comics. It was more interactive and was just visually pleasing to watch. Although in the comics, they're more superhero looking with their abilities when they fight Eve. Now, the comics does show how she's not equipped to fight a real battle against multiple opponents, which makes sense for a newbie hero with little combat experience. And she's pretty much really bloodied up at the end, whereas her show counterpart is doing full flips and acting like she's, some kind of seasoned veteran with her powers and even with fighting. It looked dope, but it didn't really make much sense to me. The comics even showed a little bit as to how scared Eve was in the fight as she actually prays to God, but it felt a little bit like a mockery, which could be as to why they left it out of the show. Who knows? She also turned herself into some kind of Diamond Head ripoff in the comics when she fights her siblings, but in the show it was more just a armored suit. Now, when the siblings died in the comics, they all burst into green mist at once, but they all died one by one and turned into smoke in the show, which I think was more dramatic and hit the feels a little bit more with the family story that they were doing. Now, with the confrontation with Erickson and Brandyworth, the altercation that led to the Doctor's death and Eve's biological mother's death was an accident in the show. But in the comics, Erickson deliberately shot the canister that kept Eve's mom alive and headshotted Brandyworth, actually, being an absolute savage in the comics. He even shot Brandyworth again for good measure. If I look at it correctly, I believe Eve killed Erickson and the assistant doctor in the comic when her powers went berserk. But in the show, they just lose their memories? I was actually pretty confused about that part, to be honest. I'm not too sure as to how that works. Oh, and don't get me started at the end with Omni-Man showing so much anger. That was wild. In the comics, it's literally 4 panels, and it's all a side-faced Omni-Man showing no emotion, probably hiding frustration. After asking if Mark got his powers, and he said no. The show really built up the fact that he cared for his family and was truly conflicted and frustrated about Mark not getting his powers and his eventual attempt to take over Earth. Now, some opinions that I had about Invincible Presents Atom Eve was, I will say, I need more of these Invincible Presents special episodes. We need more origins of important characters like Rexplode, Duplicate, and maybe even Immortal. It would be great to see them in the show and reworked. Like Rex Origins could be, man, that could hit so hard if done correctly. I'm hoping that we can get this in between seasons to kind of maybe fill in the gap, as long as they don't split up seasons anymore, because splitting up seasons is the worst thing ever and it never has been good for anyone. I really enjoyed the expansion on this 2-issue origin and how much they fixed. This was definitely season 1 vibes. And as usual, the soundtrack was a banger, and the animation style did show signs of what we got into season 2, but it was still cartoony, but it still had hints of season 1, a little bit more Ryan Ottley art style in there. I kind of got the vibes of, so I did enjoy the animation in this Atom Eve Presents episode. But that's my opinions and thoughts from what I saw and noticed as the differences between the comic book and the show. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I'm Captain Zeus, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.